Little Hands, Big Attitude Book, Two Little Changes, Big Steps, Chapter 14. In the quiet hours of the night.
Many, many years ago, my ancestors were the leaders of a kingdom, a land comprised of many islands and of many harbors. These were known as the Soul Islands, from which my family is named. The majority of the kingdom and its denizens resided on the largest island, and as such, so did much of the trade and culture. It was a prosperous land and was often threatened by lingering pirates on its edges, but brave souls were sent out to protect the trade ships and harbors from the blight, and everything seemed peaceful. But something was happening beneath the surface of the islands, something was festering. Resting over the kingdom on the largest island stood a massive mountain, peaks reaching into the clouds like the tiers of a crown. But what we didn't know, or perhaps the majority of the kingdom didn't know, was that this mountain known as Pele was a volcano. One day, Pele's crown was shattered by a massive eruption. Massive boulders were flung down on the cities, lava and burning mud streamed down her face like tears, and her cries shook the waters. The explosion and following aftershocks decimated the main island, and the tsunamis formed by the trembling sunk and scrubbed clean the small islands. The kingdom was in ruin. The surviving people, including my ancestors, sent messages onward to neighboring kingdoms for help, but it never came. It is not known why for certain. Perhaps the messages never reached them, perhaps similar disasters had shaken their kingdoms as well, or perhaps they did not care enough to send aid. Whatever happened, the people were left on their own, trying to survive in what was left. Decades later, the volcano was still weeping, preventing much in the way of rebuilding. That was the world Silver and I were born into. A world on fire and surrounded by boiling waters, unknowing if there was a safe place out there across the waters where we could live. So we stayed.
Blaze's story had settled in Knuckles' head, and it had stayed all the rest of that night. After dinner, they'd cleaned up their places, Sonic offering what was left of his roast meat to Ozzy, and then they all came together in the living room, playing a game of Scrabble. Tails won pretty easily, though he kept getting disappointed when he would be missing one letter to make a long scientific word that Sonic was certain wasn't even a real thing. When it was starting to get late and Obsidian had fallen over from falling asleep sitting up, Allison and the two visitors donned their coats and then bid the Wachowskis farewell for the night. Now, lying on the floor of the attic and listening to the sounds of the wind whistling against the windows, Knuckles had time to really think about everything Blaze had said. He had come from a proud, prosperous tribe, a tribe that, as he'd learned in the last few months, made some pretty lousy and selfish choices a long time ago. Choices that had led the tribe he knew to be primarily driven by one thing: to find the Master Emerald and be restored to their possession. But even with that drive and how it had influenced his upbringing, there had been other things. There were dances, feasts, and holidays to uphold every year. He still had a culture, a history to call back to in the late evenings. Amongst the war training and the sharpening of tools and weapons, there was fruit picking, fishing, simply enjoying the sun and each other's company. Knuckles tried to think what it would have been like to have been perhaps wandering the forest with his father, learning from his years of experience, and then out of nowhere, the ground split open and lava spewed forth like geysers, and for the entire forest floor to be shattered by fire and death in perhaps only moments. This had happened before Blaze and Silver were even alive, but they had been born into this world and had to fight just to stay alive from that moment on. Every morning they awoke and had to find food, shelter, resources, in a world what didn't have much left. Every morning they awoke wondering if there was anything left. That wasn't living, that was just surviving. And Knuckles had never been so relieved to know that Silver and Blaze had been able to get away from it, and to someone who could help them live and be loved.
Knuckles? Did I wake you?
Knuckles sat up, the soft voice coming from the corner. In the darkness, he saw Tails climbing out of his bed and tiptoeing over to the echidna's mat. Knuckles shook his head, confused as he'd thought that he'd woken up Tails.
No. Did I wake you?
Tails shook his head, taking a seat beside his older brother. He curled one of his tails around him, his knees pulled up to his chest and his arms resting on them.
I'm worried.
What about?
Tails' ears drooped a bit.
Shadow, after what you and I saw and what that zombie Sonic said, I'm worried about what happened to him.
After the attack?
Tails nodded.
His sister gave her life to save him, but it sounds like they still got him and he's trapped somewhere. Do you think Do you think that's why they wanted Sonic so bad before? Because they thought he might be like Shadow?
Knuckles shrugged.
I cannot say. There is much about what we saw that we do not know. And we still do not know why Obsidian would show it to us.
Both were quiet again for several seconds, and Tails lifted his head, his brows furrowed.
We have to find him, Knuckles. We have to.
Knuckles pulled an arm around the fox, squeezing him against his side a little.
We will, Tails. We will.
She'd show them all.
I will be the greatest thief in the galaxy.
She whispered to herself. This air duct wasn't the smallest one she'd infiltrated, but it was certainly a tight squeeze. The guild, the collective of the best thieves in the world that had raised her, thought that she couldn't complete this mission on her own. She'd show them. The whispers of Project Shadow had reached their hideout, tales of a treasure immeasurable, a power source of untold potential, and Rouge the Bat was going to be the one to snatch it up. The pitch black of the vent wasn't really a problem for Rouge, she could see just fine, but still, every so often she would give a soft chirp, much too high for the human ear to pick up, and then close her eyes. She was mapping out the various passages in her head, seeing further ahead than any human's night vision goggles could ever hope to see. She knew she was getting close. She could feel it in her bones, and in the chill of the air. Such a big power source would need to be kept in a cool environment after all, and she was starting to see her breath whenever she pulled her mask down to get in gulps of fresh air. In the chill, she could feel the tiny white stone in her pocket radiating a gentle heat. It too was some sort of power source, but she would have to prove herself to her peers before she could ever hope to show it off and not have it taken from her. The trail of cool, moist air led her deeper into the compound. Getting into the compound was the easy part. She had a feeling it wouldn't be so easy getting out. Hauling a big engine out of here when alarms were blaring and government agents were on the prowl was going to be a much bigger challenge, but it would be worth it, and she could do it. She was going to be the greatest thief in the galaxy, and no silly army was going to stop her. Finally, light emerged and she peered down through the grate. Below her, she could see a small room, with a large circle in the center of the floor and fog pouring out from under the edges. This was definitely it.
Perfect. Piece of cake hauling an engine out of here that's almost twice my size. I've got this.
She paused as she felt a tug, and saw that her suit had gotten caught on one of the grates of the vent cover. She reached to pull it loose, and then gasped as the little white stone tumbled out of her pocket and through the grate. She watched in silent horror as the stone tumbled and bounced around the equipment in the room below, before finally landing on some sort of console and settling against a lever. She waited, but no alarms sounded. Her presence was still invisible. Rouge gave a sigh of relief, and then pulled her sleeve loose from the grate and made her way to a shaft that went down to the floor. So far so good. She reached through the grate and pulled the screws loose, before carefully climbing out. Now that she was out of that tight space, she stretched her wings out a bit to reduce the cramp they were getting from being pressed against her shoulders.
That's better. Now to get this thing open and out of here before.
All at once the little white stone began to glow, and the machines around began to hum. Lights flashed to life, beeping and whines singing out. And then outside of the room, Rouge heard an alarm begin to sound. Maybe she should try to get out while she still could. She stepped back as the circle in the center of the room then hissed, filling the room with fog that clouded her vision as it rose up and out of the floor. Even though the fog, however, she could see something like a silhouette inside of the capsule. What was inside of it? The front of the capsule opened, and then she heard a series of clacks like locks opening, before a figure stumbled out of the pod, falling to their hands and knees with a pained grunt. As the fog dissipated, she could see it was a hedgehog, one from her home planet, and not much older than she was, physically of course. Who knew just how long they'd been trapped in this machine? Was this a prison of some sort? He pulled himself up to his feet, his crimson eyes piercing through the darkness of his black quills and fur like tiny lasers. Was this engine powered by this hedgehog? Or was the hedgehog the engine itself? She was reminded of the alarms. No doubt the guards would be coming this way any second. She snatched up the gemstone once more and prepared to flee, but then realized the hedgehog had seen her. He could describe her, identify her. The hedgehog looked at her and then placed a hand on his chest.
You have awakened me from a long slumber. I am.
Gonna snitch? Like I'm gonna let that happen. You're coming with me, Quill Pickle.
She grabbed his arm and tugged him away with a strength that seemed to surprise him.
All right. No need to drag me.
He pulled his arm free and followed her back to her exit route, back into the ventilation shaft.
You first.
Why?
Because I don't expect you to keep up if I go first. Just go.
She shoved him forward, and he gave a glare before clambering into the shaft, and she followed. The truth was that she didn't expect him to come with her, unless she kept him from bolting by staying behind him.
Go left.
Why?
That's the way I came in. Do you want to get out of here or not?
He rolled his eyes and then shimmied further down the vent. Rouge grumbled. This had better be worth it, because if not, she had a few choice words for her mentor.
Oh, and you dropped this again back there.
She didn't know what told her to do it, but she knew that as the hedgehog held out the stone and it began to glow brighter, she needed to hold on to him. She grabbed tightly to his leg, and he gave a pained yelp before there was a flash. One moment she was inside of a confined ventilation shaft, and the next she was falling a few feet down into a grassy field. She winced as she sat up.
Are you crazy? What were you trying to do?
The hedgehog didn't respond. He stood still for a moment, clearly favoring the leg she'd touched, before the other leg collapsed out from under him and he crashed into the grass with a whimper, tiny, golden sparks fading away and the stone still in his hand as he went limp. She groaned, getting up to her feet and walking over to him. She checked to make sure he was still breathing, and then grabbed him under the arms and unfolded her wings, beating them hard to get aloft.
Come on, Sleeping Beauty. We've got a ways to go back to the hideout.
She had a feeling the officers and guards in that compound would be angry, that they'd start looking for evidence of who had freed their prisoner. But she had no idea that less than a minute after their escape, a man that had spent months infiltrating the ranks, working tirelessly to get access to Project Shadow on behalf of his beloved boss, would enter the room and find it missing. His efforts wasted. And his determination to get that weapon back burning hotter than ever.